Right, let's look at the South African picture right now. Eskom CEO Jacob Moroka has allegedly resigned, and there's a lot of speculation over whether he resigned or whether he was pushed out. What's your view?
I think my simple view is he was probably pushed, but it remains to be seen whether or not he's actually gone, because there is some talk from some political circles that he's gaining momentum. So we'll have to wait and see this morning. But, clearly, and I wrote about this, I'm quite passionate about it, accountability. There seems to be a level of a lack of a want and a will to find someone, like Barbara Hogan, she said, oh, well, she's not quite sure, if he's solely to blame. You ask yourself, where does the buck stop? Is it the consumer to blame because I'm not changing my light bulbs or not switching off my geyser? Where does it stop?
Exactly, Barbara Hogan being the Public Enterprises Minister, and we're also hearing that President Jacob Zuma backs Moroka quite significantly as well. There's been mixed views about who backs Moroka and who doesn't, and it all comes down to accountability. But one of the views out there is that Jacob Moroka is not solely to blame, but his predecessors as well.
Absolutely, his predecessors. But he's been an executive there for, I think it's 9 years or 8.5 years. So, clearly he's had some insight, and he's been working at the company, I think, since 1998. So he's clearly had some insight as to what's been happening in the background. I think ultimately it boils down to the issue of, we needed to provide all the households in this company as well as fast-growing business as we entered into a new era with a lot of electricity very quickly. And even if we look at some of those power stations, the big ones, Medupi, Kusile, they're only mooted to be finished in 2015, 2016. So often, investors don't like to stick their neck out more than 12 months. How can you foresee something 6, 7, 8 years out? I'm not saying, there shouldn't be fingers pointed, but I think ultimately a lack of planning has led us to this point. And we're lucky in some way that the world has entered an economic downturn, because then our power problems would be a lot more acute than they are now.
Well, it was alleged that Eskom chairperson Bobby Godsell announced that Jacob Moroka had resigned to the staff yesterday. What is interesting to note that in my email box we had an invitation by Eskom to go to a briefing that would give us the latest developments, and then shortly after that briefing was cancelled. Yeah,
that briefing was at 1 o'clock. Normally the employees are the last people to know out of anything. And it was duly cancelled, I think, 10 minutes beforehand. So, obviously there's some meddling from some different quarters there. I'm not quite sure, but I think we'll see more clarity today.
Well, I spoke to Lumkile Mondi yesterday from the IDC, and he just said that if he were Jacob Moroka, he would probably resign because he's getting so much pressure. And why work for a company that actually doesn't want you there? I mean, if you've got so much pressure from the board members for you to leave the company, then why stay on?
Well, no doubt he looks at his bank balance at the end of the month. No, that aside, I think you're dead right. I mean, if you've got enormous pressure from almost all quarters, perhaps the sensible thing to do is to step down.
Right, just looking at the gold price, because that's been rallying, and many are calling 1,100, and some are even saying it's going to gather more momentum and hit 1,200, 1,300. Sasha, do you think that is going to happen, considering that there's so much interest by banks globally to buy more bullion and sell dollars?
Diversify their assets. Now, I'm just more interested in the Jim Rogers, Nouriel Roubini smackdown here, where Roubini basically is rubbishing gold, and Jim Rogers is saying, "Hey, you're missing the point here." I don't know. It obviously was an interesting move. I don't know if it comes more from not just the Indian central bank wanting to, because that's where most of the argument is coming from. But isn't it an enormous amount of money in the bigger picture in terms of someone's reserves? I guess the simple answer is yes. But ultimately for me, the gold price is still priced in dollars. And that's the price that everyone refers to. We don't talk about the Indian rupee per 10 gram price. That's not the one. And when people keep saying, oh, it's hitting a record high, I keep saying in dollars, not in rands, because we're still way away from that price.
Definitely. Well, just looking at the rand, because it's strengthened to around 7.55 the last I checked. So the rand steaming ahead. Again, the dollar is around 148, but the rand just seems to be very resilient at these levels.
I think it's more a flow of whether, and you saw when markets sold off, most emerging market currencies sold off. Didn't matter where you were. An equity market sold down, all commodities sold off. So it's more a matter of the flows. So as we start to feel a little bit more comfortable, I guess the rand fundamentals will come to the fore. But interestingly, at the same time, our economy will start improving. We'll be exporting more. I don't know if you got a chance to see yesterday, we're exporting more coal through Richards Bay at its best level since December 2007. So, you know, there are certain signs that our economy is starting to gain some traction at this point.
Well, Sasha, just going forward from here, what are the key indicators that you'll be looking for and watching out for that you think will be quite key as to give us an indication as to where we're headed on a global level?
The evergreen Rick Santelli summed it up on Monday. He said it's all about Friday, 8:30 Eastern Standard Time, and it will be. It's that jobs number in the US today. So 3:30 our time. I guess that's where everyone will be watching that screen. We'll probably drift a little bit around until then.